Let's do a good podcast. I got to beat Dan Black.
Dan Black? I love it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I think Dan had 165, so I'm going for a simple 166. I don't need to beat him by much, just one.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Over the Hedge. My name is Jacob Ober, and to tell you a little bit about myself, I come from New City, New York. I've now been at Binghamton for 4 years. Crazy to say, but still, like many of you, I do not know exactly what I want to do with my career. I do know I'm a people person. I love traveling, sports, nature, more, but I don't have it all figured out, and that's okay. This podcast is all about exploring different paths and perspectives, learning from others, and maybe finding some answers along the way. So join me as we dive into stories, insights, and advice that might just help you consider new possibilities for your own life. Evan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Hi, everyone. My name is Evan Goldberg. I'm an MBA candidate here at Binghamton University, concentrating in management informational systems. And I'm born and raised on Long Island. And just a quick fun fact about me is that I'm a diehard Yankees fan, and just like Jacob, not entirely sure of what I want to pursue long term.
And Adam, could you please give us an elevator pitch to someone who doesn't know who you are?
Sure. And I'm still not sure what I want to do either, but there's time for me yet. So thanks for having me on, both Jacob and Evan. This is a real pleasure for me. My name's Adam Greene. I am a Binghamton alumni, class of 1996. I am now a managing director in the investment banking legal area at Goldman Sachs and have been here for about 22 years. We'll talk more about that, but for now, I'll turn it over to Jacob and Evan.
Well, thanks so much for being here. So, first, take it back to Binghamton. So, what originally sparked your interest in law, and how did you come about the decision that corporate law was the right direction for you? And also, if you could just give a little background to what you studied and your experiences at Binghamton.
Sure. At Binghamton, I was a double major in philosophy, politics, and the law and economics. I always knew going into Binghamton that I wanted to be a lawyer. I think when I was, early teens, mid-teens, at that point, my two choices felt like had to be a doctor or a lawyer, and I don't like science and I don't like blood. So I figured, okay, I'm gonna pivot to the law part of it. I was captain of my mock trial team my senior year in high school. Having a bit of luck and a bit of skill. I think you need both in order to get yourself to where you want to go. Obviously, you can't control the luck part, but you can put yourself in the right position. So with my mock trial experience, I had the absolute fortune of having Sherman and Sterling, which is one of the big law firms in Midtown. We had two litigation associates that were our coaches. So in hindsight, that was just an incredible opportunity. And as the captain of the team, they offered me a summer internship between my senior year in high school and starting at Binghamton my freshman year. And I was a litigation paralegal there. And we'll get more into litigation and corporate later in the podcast. But I was a litigation paralegal there. And so between my high school experience in mock trial and being exposed to that dynamic at Sherman, it really fostered my interest in the law. And I felt like at Binghamton, philosophy, politics, and law and economics was, for me anyway, the perfect double major to explore that. I then parlayed Binghamton I went straight through, we could talk about that too. I went straight through to NYU School of Law, where I had a great experience, and then continuing in the New York trajectory, need a passport to leave New York. I started my career at another one of the big law firms, Simpson, Thacher, and Bartlett, where I practiced sort of mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, corporate governance, and other, again, corporate law aspects. And then we'll get into this later in the podcast, but in 2004, I decided, I was a fifth year associate at the time, I decided that I was going to move on to in-house, explored a number of different opportunities and found myself, without knowing a lot about it, I think you guys know far more about Goldman than I did, certainly in '04, and which is incredible. But here I am 22 years later at Goldman Sachs.
Awesome. Really cool to hear how you got to where you are.
Yeah.
I guess let's pause at the law school part. So,
Yeah.
first, what made you decide NYU? What strategies did you find to find success in law school? And in what ways was the experience similar or different from undergraduate studies?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a great question. So NYU for me, first of all, and I hope your viewers appreciate this, up until uh, early August of 1996, which is when I started. Yes, that's a lifetime ago. When I started law school, I was going to Georgetown, which I was very, very excited about. I had picked all my classes. I had actually bought a car, 1991 Pontiac Grand Prix. Was very excited about that. I had the housing, paid my deposit, and then when I got home from visiting my girlfriend, another Binghamton alum, who I met my sophomore year, her freshman year. So I love Binghamton. We'll get into that later. But I came back to a big manila envelope from NYU 3 weeks before classes started that I got off the wait list. And so I had a very big decision to make in a very short amount of time because I had my mindset of going down to Georgetown. And so ultimately, I did go to NYU. And why? I think it was a number of different things for me at the time. Number one, admittedly, it was highly ranked and very well respected, as was Georgetown. Don't get me wrong. It's an amazing school and an amazing school now for both undergrad and grad. But, NYU was highly ranked. Number two, it was in New York City. I thought that was, going to be fun and important to me. And my girlfriend at the time was going to be a senior at Binghamton. And so obviously the drive from the city over to Binghamton, especially I had this 1991 Pontiac Grand Prix at the time, would be easier than getting there from DC. And I also felt like at the time, knowing that I did want to, I just felt like I was going to go back to big law. I had that experience at Sherman and Sterling. And so knowing that I wanted to do big law or had this concept of big law and wanting to do corporate work, I just felt like where else would, to do that than NYU. So for those reasons, I chose NYU. And it was absolutely an incredible experience. I think you asked two other questions. I'm going to hit one of them first, which is, and this is my fault, but I found law school to be much easier than Binghamton. And most people have the same reaction. You probably just heard Jacob and Evan's reaction. I was just talking to another Binghamton grad who works with me at Goldman. She went to Fordham for law school. And we were talking about sort of things that I did at Binghamton that, do I regret? I don't know. It got me to where I am today. And my girlfriend at the time stayed with me. So no accounting for judgment there. But I found that law school was easier because unlike Binghamton, where you're constantly bombarded with tests, with quizzes, with papers, with projects, with research, with doing podcasts. It's every weekend, every week, there's something else going on. At law school, as difficult as it is, and obviously it has that reputation, I found that, I don't think NYU is unique to this, and it's scary, but you take one exam at the end of the semester, right, in December and May. It makes or breaks you. However, that means that, and I think, Jacob, you alluded to this, that means, though, that from August to December and from January to May, right, you're just doing a job. You have a job to do. And that's to read all the cases and briefs and make sure you're staying up to date with your reading, right? And make sure you're preparing for class. You're participating, as much as you can in class. And so when you do that each and every day, it allows you time to have fun. And frankly, I would go out a lot of nights, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, in Greenwich Village, which was an amazing place to go to law school. So I think to your question about, how do you succeed in law school? And again, in some ways it's easier than Binghamton because you just want to stay on track. You want to put yourself in the best possible position so that come mid-November, Thanksgiving time, or sort of late April in the spring semester, you're in a position where you've taken all that good work you've done throughout the semester, and then you could put your head down and study mightily for sure. And then you 3 weeks of a lot of agony until you take that test. And then there's more agony because your entire semester is dependent on that one test.
I just have a quick question because you made a lot of
please,
tough life decisions, switching from big law to going to Goldman to choosing between two amazing law schools with such a short period of time. What advice do you have for students or just anyone in general who's either, deciding between schools, deciding between companies, and able to make that decision with, the most information in front of them?
Yeah, no, Evan, it's a great question. I think that obviously the last time I chose a school was 1996, but so it was a few days ago. But I think that, there's a number of different things to consider, right? And I think this is one of the questions that we were talking about is, first of all, you know, where do you want to be, right? So I think that, when you're thinking about school, whether you want to be on the West Coast, do you want to be in the Midwest? Do you want to be in New England, right? Whether it's, Boston or other areas over there, there's obviously a ton of different schools. So I think that's number one, right? As to where do you want to be? Do you feel like that's a place where you could see yourself getting a job, settling down? I think the second thing, as we talked about with my choice with NYU, is what is that school known for? What can it do for you in terms of, what can you study there, right? Is there a particular specialty that you're really interested in? Some schools have that over others, right? Obviously, you guys have selected an amazing college, but as you're thinking about your college choice, right? I have, as I think you both know very well, my son Owen is a sophomore at Binghamton, so yet another reason I'm very, very all in on Binghamton. His friends, he had one friend that wanted to go into architecture. That's very niche, and so he went to a school that was more focused on that, right? And so, what are you going to be studying? And does that particular school, especially if you're thinking about law school, medical school, business school, I know for you guys especially, you're kind of looking between business and law, what does it offer? And then what do the alum do, right? Are they a particular feeder school for certain things? Honestly, when I went to NYU, I was hoping, and I think it came true, that they were going to be a good feeder school for me for corporate law and big firms and give me that access, right? So I think those are just a few things, Evan, that I think of when I think about, the right school.
I just want to build off making those
Yeah.
decisions for a second. So first, I want to ask, like, how did your time at the firms like Simpson Thacher and Cahill Gordon shape your understanding of the legal world? And then what motivated you to move from these law firms to more of an in-house role at Goldman?
So a few things. The law firm is truly an apprenticeship culture. People always say, can you go right in-house? The answer is probably. And there are going to be companies out there, and there are hundreds of companies out there that would be happy to take a really smart person from a good law school, right? I think that when it comes to a firm like Goldman Sachs, we never hire directly out of law school. We want someone to have had 3, 5, 7 years at the law firm. And why? Because it is an apprenticeship culture, right? It's where you start to get your bearing as a professional. And so in terms of Simpson and Cahill, it really taught me things about how to focus on attention to detail, how to really ensure that I'm doing a careful review of my work product. The other two things that I think it did that was really important to when I came over to Goldman after my 5th year, being out of law school, is number one, you start to learn the substantive law. So one of the interesting things about law school is, generally speaking, while I did take corporate classes here and there, and I did have exposure, and I did sort of know that's what I wanted to do, or at least thought so, law school is about how to think, right? Law school, for those of your viewers who are interested in that, law school is less about substance and more about how to think, critically analyze, deep thinking. Like, I can't read a novel anymore without wanting to get a pen and a highlighter and start to go through it, which kind of takes away some of my weekend hobbies. I got to work on those as my senior in high school looks to leave the nest as well. And so that's what law school is for. But then you get to the firm, and now you got to start learning this body of law, rules, cases, whatever you're going to do. And so I think that's one of the things Cahill and Simpson gave me. The other thing that it starts to allow you to do is form judgments. One of the things that makes me very successful at Goldman Sachs is my judgment, right? I've got this pit in my stomach or not. Whenever I have something come up, after 22 years at Goldman, 27 years of practicing, more than that, you start to develop that. You guys have it a bit now, and it develops. It's like dog years. I think those are the things that were so important to me at the law firms and building up those relationships. I think that, like you and Evan, right, who I know are very good friends, and you have that relationship, it's the same thing when you're a junior associate at a law firm. I came over to Goldman with a guy that's a great friend, that we started the same day in the same conference room in September of 1999 at Simpson Thacher. And we went over to Goldman 2 weeks apart, and then now we're still working together. So you build those relationships with your peers, with mid-level associates, with senior associates, with partners, and it positions you well for the transition. And then to answer your other question, so I loved Simpson Thacher. I really enjoyed Big Law. It was a great experience. But frankly, in 2004, I decided at that time that Big Law for me was not going to be sustainable over the long term of my career. There are people that are born to be law firm partners. There are people that go back. And I know several of very close friends that have gone from Goldman back to become law firm partners. That was not going to be sustainable for me. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a great career, but it was not the one that I wanted to pursue. So in January of 2004, my New Year's resolution was to go in-house. And I didn't know what that looked like in January of 2004, but I looked at a number of different investment banking opportunities. I looked at a handful of corporate opportunities. And as I alluded to earlier with you guys, you know far more about Goldman than I did. You know, I came across this role at Goldman Sachs. It was actually called special execution. At the time, I thought it was like you get like, you know, military arms or something. I know what that special execution. It sounded scary, and I didn't do a lot of work with Goldman when I was at Simpson Thacher. And so I come in and I interview, and at the time, and I still think this is the case, it was a very long interview process. It was multiple months. I think I interviewed like 16 people. But what I started to realize in interviewing is, oh my God, this is a great organization. It's a great organization. It's a great group. It's great people. I'm going to do really interesting work. And it had a lot of the things that I really enjoyed at the law firm, but frankly didn't have. I mean, it's Goldman Sachs, and so it is not for the faint of heart either, but there is a different work-life balance for me here than there would have been at the law firm. So in May of 2004, I accepted my offer, and now 22 years later, almost, it feels like a blink of an eye.
Okay, so you've been at Goldman for 22 years. What keeps the
Yes.
work exciting and meaningful for you? What keeps you from going to a different firm, or what keeps you at Goldman?
Bite your tongue, bite your tongue. I would never do that. No. A couple of things to answer your question, Jacob. I would say, first of all, the people at Goldman is one of the main things that keeps me here. The people here are terrific. I mean, my team in particular, the people that I've worked with for my entire 20 years, including my friend Dan, who I came over from Simpson with, and I don't want to name anyone so I don't leave someone out, but you know, the people here are great. My group is amazing. To be able to work with this talented group of people, they're incredibly intelligent. They humble me every day, how smart they are. But they're also really, really fun to work with. We enjoy going out to dinner or drinks, or just before the podcast, I was out there with a few of my colleagues, just talking about various fun things. And so the people, certainly. The second thing is the work, right? And so Goldman's just always, fortunately, at the forefront of working on really, really high profile transactions. You get to work on cutting edge things. You know, they're always, you know, trying to find something better to do, newer to do to help our clients. And frankly, the management's great here. I think that, you know, it's well run. You know, obviously, you know, nothing's perfect when you're running a 43,000 person organization, but I appreciate, you know, how the organization is run, and you know, I'm happy to be a part of it for as long as I have. I would say, you know, I think one of your questions is what keeps it fresh. I would say new products are always coming out. Just over the passage of time, things do not stand still. There's new products, new laws, right? So, you know, going back to 2005, let's see, that's right. You guys were just about born there because Owen was born in November of 2005. So just about there. is where we had one of our first really huge overhauls of the capital markets laws, literally since like 1933. And since then, there's been other new laws, 2012, 2014, and more recently as well. And so there's new laws that are coming out. And so responding to those and figuring out how they fit in is something else that keeps things fresh. And new trends. There are things that I'm doing now that didn't exist back then, right? LinkedIn. You guys are, I know, really huge proponents of LinkedIn, both of you. You're avid posters. I like to read your posts and keep up with what's going on in the
Thank
world
you.
of Jacob and Evan and Binghamton. LinkedIn did not exist when I was in college at Binghamton, right? And so, for example, one of the things that, frankly, we get a tremendous amount of pressure on in the legal side is posting on LinkedIn, right? Well, that raises legal, regulatory liability issues. So I spend a great deal of time working with my marketing team, with my bankers on analyzing those laws, rules, regs, speaking to my peers at different banks. What are you guys doing? Speaking to outside law firms. What do you think is the risk? And then bringing it back to Goldman and talking to my colleagues here as to, how should we pursue this? And, some of it is, not for the faint of heart again, because it's not black or white, right? And so I think those are a number of reasons why it's something that I continue to enjoy doing.
All right, I'm going to challenge you now on a bit of the flip side.
All right.
One thing you mentioned is how great the people are.
Yeah.
And as a managing director, I'm sure you're in charge of a lot of people. So first, what challenges have you found in maybe working with some people who are not the most agreeable or are tough to manage? And then I've also heard a lot of the stuff you love. I also wanted to hear what's your least favorite part of the job?
How to deal with challenging people. Patience. I found very, very early in my career, right, listening to people, understanding, whether someone is really being combative and challenging you, on your advice, or, they're being difficult and saying, oh my God, you guys aren't being responsive to me. I think, being calm, being patient, being responsive, and having answers, right? One of the things that, my boss has always instilled in me is certainly before, a call, I will put together, it may not be formal, but I put together sort of a list of bullets that I can just point to, and I feel good about articulating those, right? Whether that's why we took a certain course of action, why we should, look to do it this way, what are the problems? And I found that in dealing with people that may be a little bit trickier to deal with, I find that if you explain to them calmly and patiently, right, that you understand what they're saying, you appreciate it, but here's why we can't do this, right? Whether it's a law, whether it's a policy, whether it's reputational, right? I think you start to build up that trust. So that is how I have, dealt with people that may not be as easy and friendly to deal with as others.
You mentioned a lot about how you didn't quite know exactly what you were getting into, starting at Goldman Sachs, but now being there for, over 20 years, what is maybe one misconception that you think that maybe students may have about corporate law, investment banking, or maybe Goldman as a whole?
So I'll take corporate law as an answer. So I would say that, and by the way, I was when I thought about that question, you guys tell me what your conceptions are. Like, what are you thinking about corporate law? And I can tell you whether you're right or not. But I think to answer your question, I think that it is not black and white. I think that some people might say, oh, it's corporate law, right? There's a set of rules, you follow them. That's number one. Number two, oh, I'm looking at contracts all day, right? I'm looking at the same contract each and every day. That is both of those are misconceptions, right? So number one, I would say that there are so many rules, right? I mean, even after 20 plus years, there are so many rules. And, yes, I know a lot of them, especially for what I do for a living, but I have to rely on other experts. I have to go to my colleagues. Hey, I know I've asked you this 15 times, but remind me again on this particular rule. So there's a lot of different rules, and really trying to get, to be expert in a lot of them is very, very challenging. Right? I think that's a little bit of a misconception in terms of the breadth of that. The second thing is, as I alluded to, it's not black and white, right? I think that even when you get the knowledge of the rules, so many of them are incredibly subjective, right? And that's what I get paid to do, right? In fact, yesterday, I was in one of my colleagues' offices with another colleague. There was three of us. It was my colleague Dan and my colleague Matt. And we were having like a heated debate on something that has arisen because of the government shutdown and sort of strategizing how we have to approach that to still try to get IPOs done. And I can get into that in a little bit more. But we're literally having a heated debate. I mean, we've been working together for over 2 decades, right? And Dan and I for even more. And we're having a heated debate because the law that we were trying to think about is not black and white, right? And even if on its face, it may look clear, it may not always be. I think that's another misconception about corporate law.
Can we do that real quick? Can we give our version of what we think corporate law is?
Do it. I love it. Yes, please do. I want to know. I want to know.
You want to go first or you want?
You can go first.
When I think of corporate law from my ignorant student perspective, I'm thinking of a lawyer who's looking at a lot of mergers and acquisitions and essentially saying, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. And that's my simplified understanding of it.
But let me hold on. I want to stop there with Jake. Okay. I want to respond to him first. So write yours down, Evan, but I don't want you to lose it. But so that is an incredible misconception, right? It really is. I would say that sort of I alluded to a couple of these things, but number one, and we spoke about this previously, is there's so many misconceptions within that one thing, which is great because why there's no reason for you to know better. So lawyers, whether external or internal, are not there to tell you what to do and what not to do, right? I think that, and I'm going to stick with in-house for a second, but I think what my job is to do is to know the law, understand what is legal and what is not. And based on that, being able to give clients, both internal and external, the right advice as to some of their boundaries, right? But we discussed this, because you can do it, doesn't mean that you should do it, right? And there gets into a lot of judgment calls. But I want to go back to what you said about, M&A and right or wrong. No, like an in-house lawyer and an external lawyer too, they have a seat at the table, right? I mean, they are helping, their clients, the principals, the advisors, think through legal issues, reputational issues, commercial issues, giving their experience on things, helping negotiate really important provisions, particularly on the external side for M&A, right? There are judgment calls that have to be made. There's things that need to be negotiated. There could be a loser and a winner in some of these M&A negotiations. So no, I would say it's definitely a misconception as to the lawyer's seat at the table in those things. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. Evan, let's
hear. So what I envision when I see corporate law is, at least for the first few year associates, it's like a lot of long, grueling hours and just a lot of contracts. That's what I've heard from a lot of first year associates, that not much client interaction early on. And you're essentially going through documents, doing a lot of doc review, and just at the very least, advising clients on what to do and not necessarily seeing the full fruition of your work.
Okay, that is less of a misconception.
Good job.
So look, I think you are saying that and fairly saying that in the context of big law, right? And that's one of the things that I was thinking about as I'm preparing for the podcast, is the different aspects of different legal jobs, right? There's so many. And we're talking about big law a lot here, but there's 100 different types of law, and there's 1,000 different places to practice it, right? Very solo practitioner firms, 10-person firms. And yes, there's 1,000-person firms, right? There's public, there's private, there's, companies. And so I think that the what you just articulated is on the fairer side. When you are a junior associate at a law firm, right? Yes, someone has to do some of that heavy lifting, that is long, grueling hours. And I think in 2025, as we approach 26, I hope that law firms are trying to balance that out, not to work life, but at least trying to give junior associates exposure to things, seeing the partners and senior associates in action with clients, seeing how decisions are made. But you're right. The work has to get done. Documents have to be produced, due diligence, review of all sorts of things in the business, financial, accounting, legal, regulatory, contractual, real estate, right, have to be done. And so, yes, I think you're right that is definitely looked at it as more of a junior associate role. But as I kind of started out with, you have to start somewhere.
Can you talk about maybe some of your favorite or most memorable projects you've worked on, and maybe the biggest mistake or failure you've made on the flip side?
Sure. So here we go. I've got props. Here we go. This is actually 25 pounds. So this is there you go. So I don't want to bore your listeners any more than I am already. But so that was my favorite deal. It was the carve out from Johnson and Johnson. We all know Johnson and Johnson of Kenvue, which is their consumer health company. And it has, brands like Tylenol and baby powder and Neutrogena and all the consumer brands that we all know of. And it was a multi-year transaction where, Goldman worked very, very closely with the client on all aspects of it, sort of thinking about it from the beginning with structuring and then doing a number of different transactions across different products facing all sorts of different issues. And that was probably my most memorable transaction. The thing that I loved most about it was the interaction, not only within Goldman. I mean, we had like 9 different areas focused on it, but also the working group, right? Being very close with our outside counsel, actually learning the treasurer's name of Johnson & Johnson. I don't always get to do that as an in-house bank lawyer. And so it really was just that perfect mix of, great relationships, really, really complicated issues that ultimately resulted in a terrific transaction for both clients. I got to say, in terms of mistakes, again, I'm not perfect, far from it, but I wouldn't say there's any particular mistake that I made. The one thing that I would say that's more conceptual that I did not do, and I have not done, and probably old dog, new tricks, is taking advantage of opportunities that are presented to you. For example, much earlier in my career, I had the chance to have mobility and go overseas, whether it's to London or to Hong Kong. I said no in about 4 seconds, right? It wasn't in my personality. I like doing what I was doing. And so I don't like change, which is not always good for career planning. And so that is something that definitely I would tell people, if you have the mindset for it, think hard about opportunities like that. It's okay to take the windy road, right? And some of the most successful people, especially at Goldman Sachs, have taken the windy road. And so, frankly, again, not for my personality, but, it's okay to do that. It's okay to, go one spot, geez, I don't like that. Go to another, oh, I don't like that. To find that right destination for you. Again, it's exactly the opposite of what I've done, but I've met so many people that have done it and done it successfully, and they're better off for it. And so just, I wouldn't call it a mistake, as I said, because that was a conscious choice that I'm happy with where I am. But that's certainly something that if I had to go back 30 years, 25 years, 20 years, would I have made a different choice on some of those things? Maybe.
I love that. And I love how you emphasize taking the windy road. That's something that resonates with me a lot. On top of your busy job with the Alumni Association, the Board of Directors, the Binghamton Parents Leadership Council, volunteering at the Metro Connections Night, how do you manage all these commitments, and what makes you want to give back? And what have you taken away from these experiences?
Why do I do what I do with the school and those things that I'm very, very proud to be part of? So I had an incredible experience at Binghamton. And the former chair of the Parent Leadership Council, David Cohan, who is now on the board of directors with me, we're both new board members as of this past fall. Whenever he would speak about Binghamton, he would always say his life started at Binghamton. And that resonates with me. I mean, I echo David's sentiments 100% because I met my wife at Binghamton. I met her very early on. I was, August of my sophomore year. She was a freshman, and we've been together ever since. That was September of 1993. Yes, 1993. And then, look, it got me into NYU, right? It also got me into Georgetown and some other amazing schools. So I owe my entire personal and professional life. It goes back to Binghamton. It started there, right? Obviously, your first 17 or 18 years, you build up, but Binghamton put me on this road of where I am now. And then, of course, as I said earlier, and both of you know, my son is a sophomore there. And so being able to be a legacy family, and after what Binghamton has done for my wife and myself, and having him there, right, just wants me to give back to the school that much more. And so when I see the school doing as well as it is, right, whether it's in US News, whether it's Forbes, whether it's Wall Street Journal, and I see the success of folks like yourself and my son, it's extremely rewarding to me to be part of that and to have a seat at the table, whether it's at the Alumni Association board where, a few of us, we joked about, our colleague Dan Black, who's an amazing person, and his wife, Lisa, and he has two children at the school now, a senior and a freshman. And so whether it's Dan or David Cohan, whose sons just recently graduated from Binghamton, so he's moved on from the PLC. But I think having these legacy families, right, we have that, unique perspective of being an alum, but also being a parent now, and knowing what the two of you are going through, right? So I can talk about, when I'm speaking to students, I know what's going on campus because I have a son that's telling me what's going on campus. And so I want to give back to the Binghamton students and try to have a voice, whether it's with the board, whether it's at the PLC as an intermediary for other parents, because it's fun. It's fun. And I see, what the school did for me. I see what the school is doing for the two of you and my son. And so, if I can give some guidance, some direction, some perspective to other students, right? Knowing where you guys are now, obviously, many years later, it's something that's very rewarding to me.
That's awesome. And just out of curiosity, do you have specific mentors that you think of? Because I know a lot of times when people give back, they think of the people that gave to them. So has there been any really impactful people you met throughout your journey that you think of?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. I want to stay with Binghamton, right? Because there's a Binghamton podcast. My God, for anyone who's listening that's offended, I apologize. But the two that stand out to me by far, and there were others. Number one is Professor John Arthur, and you have an area named after him. John Arthur was the founder of Philosophy, Politics, and the Law. He founded PPL, and he was one of my main professors there. I remember vividly writing a 30-page paper for him off of what was called a brother word processor. Yes, you can Google that later, okay? There weren't laptops then. And so I had to print out each page one at a time to get to the 27. So having Professor Arthur sort of mentor me and give me perspective on the law and how it was rewarding to him, what was incredible. The other person that stands out was Professor Nick Sterling. Professor Sterling was basically our leader. I had the pleasure of being the president of Hinman when I was a junior. And so still friends with several of my fellow council members, and one lives in Binghamton today. And so Professor Sterling was the one who was giving us advice throughout as we dealt with some council issues. Again, sort of life counseling, mentoring. And so the two of them really stand out as people throughout my Binghamton career that helped guide me and gave me perspective, both on the personal and professional side. And there were many others along the way. And by the way, I should say, because I screwed this up in 1995, I want to say mentor is not the right term, but my wife, right? I mean, throughout Binghamton,
That's
She
the important one.
That's the important one. And you know what? I screwed that up because I still go back to when I was finishing up my presidency at Hinman. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing year. And I was turning it over to the new president and I was thanking everyone. And she was my rock. Continues to be. She was amazing throughout my presidency. I remember like, oh my God, can I really do this back in September? And she, really was extremely helpful to me. And I didn't thank her as my girlfriend. She was actually an SA rep. So I thanked her as the SA rep and not as my girlfriend. That was not good. And I feel bad about that. And so I'm rectifying that 30 years later by saying that she was someone and continues to be, which is why we're together since 93. She was someone and continues to be much smarter than me, amazing judgment, so thoughtful. And so she helped absolutely make, my Binghamton experience as good as it was.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. I thank you guys for letting me rectify that.
And tying it back again to Binghamton and how you have a kid here, and what advice do you give to either your own kids or students in terms of maybe picking a major in something they're more interested in versus something that's more practical? I know you mentioned the architect example.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful question and it's really hard, really hard. I would say two things. Number one, if you can, study what you love and do what you love. I really enjoy doing what I'm doing, and it makes it easier to come into work, to be challenged, and to enjoy what you're doing. And so, if it's possible to parlay something you really enjoy and you can major in it, right? And then do it as a career, that's awesome. That is not always possible. And I think you need to be honest with yourself about that because, look, it depends on your goals, right? So there are certain majors and minors and certificates that are so incredibly interesting, but maybe you want to be a millionaire, right? Maybe you want to be a billionaire, and that major may not be as easy to get to that road. And so I think that A, you got to think about that. And B, I think that as you're thinking through it, is there a way at Binghamton to do both, right? To sort of go on one track that maybe you think, okay, this is better for my, ultimate career, but don't leave Binghamton without having the opportunity to take the courses that you want, right? Obviously, there are some traditional majors, but whether it's, classical music or jazz or art or some really, really cool anthropology class, take the class. Like if you could fit it in, take the class. And so maybe that's not your major, but maybe it's a minor. Maybe it's just an elective. Definitely take it because you're not going to necessarily, not that life's over after college, I promise, but you're not going to have that same opportunity to have the choice of hundreds, if not thousands of classes in bespoke areas. Like I remember taking with Kathy, that's my wife, theater, and we got to watch movies together and report on them. So we took classical music. It was great. It was great. The other thing I would say, especially for your business and law viewers, being your guys of the intersection, is industry matters. So look, my advice, if you're looking to go to an investment bank, if you're looking to be an accountant, right? I think you probably need to focus more on an industry specific major, right? Whether it's the School of Management, whether it's, what my son's doing, financial economics, or something similar, I think that is important because to get to the next step, whether it's through an internship, whether it's through a grad program, they are going to test your substantive knowledge, right? On the other hand, what I do for a living, right? I alluded to this earlier. You do not need to be a PPL, history, economics, poli-sci major to go to law school. Yes, I was at one of the pre-law events when Owen was going through orientation, and they noted that the lion's share of people who went to law school happen to have those majors. And I know, Evan, you've done that on the poli-sci track before switching over on the SOM side. But, You don't need to do that to go to law school. It happens to be people do that because either they think they need to or that's their interest, or all are fine. But you can be an art major and go to law school. You can be a theater major and go to law school because that's not what law school is looking at, right? Law school, as I said, law school teaches you how to think. Law school will then give you the tools to go to the next step. So industry matters, right? And you want to know that, especially for your younger viewers, freshmen, even or sophomores that are picking that. You don't want to put yourself in a position where, geez, oh my gosh, I should have focused on my accounting minor, at some or did economics or poli sci, and now it's too late because I'm being asked these questions. So kind of have a sense of your industry, and that will then guide you to whether that major can put you on the right track.
I think that's great advice. And for any viewers out there, I'll just offer how I answered that question. So I was originally in Harper, undecided, and I really liked my PPL classes and was really interested, but didn't know what route was for me. So I decided the business world is probably more where my personality lends itself to. So I switched into the School of Management, but I still really wanted to keep that curiosity of the liberal arts degree. So I actually picked up a minor in Spanish, but my major is
Amazing.
accounting. So that's kind of how I entered it.
Yeah.
For any viewers out there.
Yeah, and
No,
actually,
please, Evan.
I was going to jump in as well. Coming into Binghamton, I think like a lot of students, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I knew I had a passion for both business and law, and I just studied political science because I figured, that's 3 more years of law school versus doing an MBA. Let's just kind of see where things go. And through my experience, I being mentored by people just like yourself. I kind of realized that my passion and strength lie more in business. So
Mhm.
now I'm pursuing my MBA right now and going down that path. So it's never like too late to switch your path. And if you truly have a passion, follow whatever that is.
Love
Yeah,
that.
and I would say one of the things at Binghamton, there are, and yes, I'm speaking as his dad, there are, and actually all my roles, fortunately, with Binghamton, there are incredible resources and support, not only with upperclassmen like yourself, but also you can go to Harper Advising, you can go to Some Advising, you can go to the Fleischman Center,
And Harper
and
Edge,
and
just
yeah,
putting it
Harper
out there.
Edge. I mean, please do. You should. I'm familiar with that too. Harper Edge, absolutely. And so, there's just so many people that are willing to speak with you and give you that guidance. But I wouldn't call this a complaint from some students that I've heard or your parents, complaining in some of the threads. You got to go get it, right? It's a big school, and so you look for your emails, but go to the advising, go to Harper Edge, go to Fleischman. I mean, Fleischman's beautiful, right? I mean, they keep on developing it and getting these great accolades, and so you got to take advantage of that. And so I think along the lines of some of the things we've been discussing as to how to figure out next steps, take advantage of those resources, because I think the biggest challenge for students is you don't know what you don't know, right? Even within law, there are like 100 different types of law. Someone says, how do you figure it out? Honestly, I'm going to give you an answer today that I've never given before. I'm finally accepting it. Use AI. I'm right. I mean, use ChatGPT. By the way, up until like 2 weeks ago, I was calling it ChatGBT until my senior in high school was like, "What are you talking about?" So I'm old, and so there's a lot of resources out there that I'm less familiar with. But honestly, if you put in to ChatGPT or any other AI tool, give me a list of every different type of law that I can practice. I'd be so fascinated to see what that comes out with. And it can give you perspective on what is that? What is that? And then you do further refined searches. And that's just the tip of the iceberg with law.
I also wanted to ask, as long as you're still good on time,
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I think our generation, I think every generation faces their own unique challenges. And I think with us, I mean, what comes to the forefront is AI. And not only that, but I think we see like a higher cost of living. I think we see just a lot of unique challenges. So what lessons do you think that you've learned are applicable to our generation? And also maybe more specifically, like, I guess, how are you implementing things like AI? Do you see that cutting your workforce numbers at all? If you could speak
I'll
on that.
address some of that. Otherwise, I'm going to have to put you in touch with David Solomon. And
Okay.
I mean, he has views on that. He's been public about it. But look, I think that the thing that strikes me the most, and my senior in high school is doing this right now because he's going the way of electrical engineering, and I think as he's been thinking about even as a high school student, and I think this applies equally to you guys. I think what yes, he's focused on what he's interested in and what he really enjoys doing, as we discussed earlier in the podcast. But I also think he's pivoted along the way, even in months' time, not years, but months or weeks, based on what he's seeing as developing in industries, right? And so, I think that for Watson, for example, for your viewers in Watson, I think they're making immediate changes to their curriculum with respect to AI, right? And computer science and how they integrate, right? And the use of AI as a way that is going to make more sense going forward than maybe what computer science was 5 or 10 years ago, right? And so I think that as you're thinking about the future, just like we were talking about looking at a major, what you love versus what you think can make some money or what you're going to do as a career, I think it's equally applicable to having that thought about, yes, AI is absolutely disrupting every industry, every single industry, right? And so you have to think about, and some of the same resources, where are you best situated to respond to that? And unfortunately, are there certain things that, 5 years ago would have been wonderful to go into, but may not be as coveted, going forward. In terms of AI, yes, look, Goldman Sachs is absolutely thinking in each and every way how to use AI to make things more effective and efficient for both, internal people as well as clients, right? And what can we afford them? There are certain jobs that are more affected by AI and what AI can do than others. But I think, for example, even as young lawyers, there's no doubt in my mind in the coming 2, 3, 5 years that junior associates, and we spoke about due diligence earlier, Evan, and looking through all those contracts, right?
Yeah.
I think that is still going to be done by junior associates, but I think the way that junior associates are going to do it, and frankly, the way they're going to be able to leverage AI, right, and being able to put contracts into AI and then ask for some feedback in terms of certain provisions, that is going to have to be learned. And it wouldn't surprise me if law schools too need to incorporate AI learning, right, into both their corporate and litigation, right? How you write a brief, but at the same time, you've heard of AI hallucinations. You probably have both read about these poor lawyers, and shame on them, right? Shame on them, with all due respect, that have submitted briefs to courts, right, with inaccurate citations or cases that don't even exist. So, still early stages, but I think in every facet of, oh my God, for the two of you, both business and law, it's absolutely going to be there. It's inevitable.
How do you want to be remembered?
Oh, that's a tough one. It's a great question. I like it. I actually have some answers to it, and not because you prepped me for it. This one knows. So, honestly, I want to be remembered as a great dad, first and foremost, a great husband and partner, second, a great friend, although, you can't choose everything. So I try to be a great friend, but a lot of your point about balancing, that's one of the ones that gets lost sometimes. A great friend, and also I should put this, a great colleague, right? Someone that was fun to work with, no matter how senior you are, whether it's my analysts that I work with or it's my senior colleagues, bosses. That's how I want to be remembered, is just a person who, I enjoyed, being with that person.
Do you have any other last questions before I ask the final question?
No, go for the final question.
All right, this is the hardest one. You ready?
All right.
What is your favorite type of potato?
My favorite type of potato. That is a good one. I figured, of course, that would be an obvious question to ask on this podcast with two upperclassmen that do, business. I'm gonna go with the yellow gold potato. You know what?
Good
No,
take.
see, hold on. You know what? You got me. So that was what came in my mind. That's not correct. My favorite potato, hands down, anytime, whether at home or at a restaurant, sweet potato.
That was my take too.
Sweet potato. My sister-in-law, my wife Kathy's sister, Linda, she makes for Thanksgiving the most amazing sweet potato casserole with great sweet potatoes, marshmallows, cinnamon. It's I look forward to it every Thanksgiving. So yellow gold is fine, but no, sweet potato is the answer to your question, Jacob.
Well, thank you so much. I know I learned a lot,
Yeah.
and I
I
know
did as well. Yeah. Really, really
Good,
grateful of your time.
I
good,
know
good.
I know the Binghamton community will be grateful to hear this.
I hope
And
so.
if there's any last words you want to give the Binghamton people, you can do it now. But otherwise, we can let you go.
All right, I'll give my last words to the Binghamton people. Keep doing great things. As I said earlier, the school is on a great trajectory. President Stenger obviously is leaving us now. In fact, we've transitioned to President D'Aleva, and I've had the absolute pleasure of listening to her speak at one of our board meetings. She visited us, and I'll tell you, she is incredible. President Stanger is very hard to replace. Obviously, he did so many incredible things for the school. But I would say right off the bat, President D'Aleva is going to do amazing things for the school as well. As I said, I had the pleasure of listening to her at a board meeting in September during the weekend of homecoming. She actually drove up immediately after being with her child at Johns Hopkins so that she could be live with us on Sunday morning of the board meetings. It was very important to her to do that, and so that when any one of you, when you guys or the people at Binghamton or alumni like myself say I went to or I go to Binghamton University, everyone's going to know who it is, and oh my God, you went to Binghamton, that's great, right? Or you go to Binghamton, that's awesome. So keep doing that, be a part of it, and I wish you guys luck.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Have a great
Okay,
day.
all right, be good, guys. Thank you.